Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a video I promised, and it is mainly for me. I hope you guys don't mind, but I mentioned already more than a month ago during a Shop My Stash video that I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep my Juvia's Place Tribe palette. Here she is. And the reason for that was that I wasn't reaching for it. And there are a few very unique and beautiful shades in this palette. However, I wasn't sure that I wanted to keep it because I never reached for it. And the formula wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. So what I'm doing today and what I had promised to do is look into my collection and see what colors are similar and make a decision. Keep it, either take out the depot the eyeshadows that I like, a bit like what Hannah Louise Boston does, or just give it away, declutter the palette, sell it on my blog as I do, or on my Instagram as I do with most of the things I declutter that are in good condition. I purchased this palette from Juvia's Place themselves when they were having a sale. Because the value of it was under 22 euros, I did not pay for customs and I did pay for the shipping. So overall, this I purchased before it was available on Beauty Bay, and still now on Beauty Bay it's the same price as buying it from Juvia's Place plus shipping. So in the end, it was a good purchase. And I have to say, since the launch of this, I was so into it. And the reason is multiples. So first of all, greens, where you're all obsessed with greens. I was obsessed with greens, I still am, and I have a ton of palettes with greens. But the deep, more teal shades, these, despite bright neon chartreuse is gorgeous. These colors here look like colors that I didn't have. And overall, I just wanted this palette and I wanted to love it. The little problem that there is here is that the quality is not consistent. There are a few shades that perform amazing, and I'm gonna pull it up again. I'm sorry guys, you're just gonna keep seeing me holding this palette. The thing is, it's so reflective that I don't feel like it's great. Anyways, what is gorgeous of this palette and great quality are these two shades. Absolutely beautiful. This dark green, teal, more green actually than teal, and you'll see later in my swatches, called Sun, is beautiful, blends well, works great. And I also really like this Chaga shimmer right here, this shimmer called Koro, which is a very light, a bit duochrome lime type of shade, but the other mattes are just so dry and hard pressed. This shade here, especially Ashanti, it's so patchy. And it's not the first time that these murky pukey browns are problematic. If you remember my review and looks with the Morphe 35M, the Boss Mood palette, also this shade like this was just extremely patchy and difficult to use. And these three up here, they're very light and they don't show up great on the skin. So I'm like, the quality of the mattes just isn't there for me for what I expected from a praised brand like Juvia's Place. I was a little bit disappointed by that. The shimmers the formula is good, but that's all, it's good. So that said, I went through my collection to take a look at what could be similar. So I put together this palette here, which is with my singles and the singles that look like it. You can see that actually it's quite okay. Like I can actually do things that are quite similar. And yeah, I will put on the screen swatches while I talk about it, of course. And then we're also gonna look at other green palettes I have, like Just My Luck, like the Color Drain Safari palette, which is the palette that I use for this makeup look, by the way. You can find this on my channel, it's a Get Ready With Me. And I also have out the Smoke Sessions by Melt and Gemini, just to look at them, compare the shades, and make a decision. Let's start with the first shade. It is a beautiful chartreuse. It's called Mazai and it is matte. The problem I have with this is that it is matte. If it would be a shimmer, I would love to use it in my inner corner, and I would use it much more because I find myself really reaching for a chartreuse shimmer like the one in the Huda Beauty Neon palette or the one from Makeup Geek that's called Limelight. Nevertheless, I have a few similar shades. The first one is the shade Relapse by Lethal Cosmetics. This is much more pastel-like color and a little bit lighter than the shade in the Juvia's Place palette. However, it does have the same idea behind it. I have to say I don't have an exact dupe for the color in the Juvia's Place palette. The next up is the shade Deja Boo by Colourpop, which is the closest in shade to the Juvia's Place. The shade is Mazai. It's the closest in shade, but this is a satin and the formula is horrible. Unfortunately, the formula of Deja Boo is just not pigmented. I don't recommend it. And then another Colourpop shade that I have is Keep Scrolling, which is much more green and neon. So I don't have an exact dupe. However, because it is a matte shade that I wouldn't use much, I am not unhappy with the single shadows that I already have. And as I mentioned, I would use the shade Limelight by Makeup Geek or this shimmery shade right here by Huda Beauty to use instead of the matte one. So that is not a shade that makes me keep the palette. Next up is this matte orange. Now this is a beautiful orange in the pan, and it is a little bit less pigmented and orange when you swatch it, and applied on the eyes it's quite light. It gives a good transition, I would say, but for me it's a transition for a very colorful look and not a transition for an everyday. And that is also something that I'm struggling with, is like this palette is not really an everyday palette for me. I would definitely need a deeper shade to blend with that orange shade. And I also have actually quite a few similar shades. From the swatches that you see on the screen, the first one is Early Bird by Makeup Geek. And this one is a little bit deeper, but a beautiful shade. I know it works really well. I've used it a lot. It is a bit more pigmented, a little bit deeper. It works better as a transition than Oromo in the Juvia's Place palette. Then I also compared it with the shade Koi by Colourpop that in the pan looks much lighter, and it is. And I would use as a pre-gradient to a shade like Early Bird. So it's similar, a little bit lighter. It kind of does do the same thing though as the shade in the Juvia's Place palette, because it is a light orangey transition shade. What this one has a little bit more of is a little bit more pastel, and I think I actually like that better. So yeah, that is second option. And the third option, which is actually the color that looks the most similar, not in the pan, but on a swatch to the shade Oromo, is Tonka by Neve Cosmetics. Now, as far as I understand, Tonka was a limited edition and you cannot get it anymore. So I'm just gonna leave it at the other two are good options if you are wondering whether that shade is for you. For me, as I said, I have 3 good alternatives to that shade that I'm happy with. Now for a little bit more difficult shade that I thought I actually didn't have at all, and was one of the reasons I wanted this palette, is this beautiful matte green. It is a lighter green compared to what is around usually, and I thought I really didn't have anything like it in my collection, but I wasn't that far off. I have one shade that like it in my collection, and that is the shade 288 by Inglot. I've used this a lot when I reach for green eyeshadow looks. I remember last year for our October challenge when I did a makeup look inspired by a movie. I can't remember what the movie was, but it was a black smoky eye with the green transition, and this is what I used, and it is a beautiful matte that works really well. Compared to the one in the Juvia's Place palette, it leans a little bit more yellow, which actually I like because I have warm undertones and warm colors look a little bit better on me, so green leaning more yellow is better for me. And On the swatches that you see on the screen, I also added Viridian by Devinah Cosmetics, but this is definitely a much more cool tones and a little bit deeper green, so it doesn't look like that at all. However, this shows me that I have two good green options, and that shade I really don't need. Now we get to shades that I love. So we get to the central row of shimmers, and we're starting with this very light shimmer called Coro. Now, I thought this was a duochrome shade. However, it is actually, I don't know, it looks different on a swatch than it does in the pan. However, I found myself comparing it to the shade Karma by Makeup Geek, which is a real duochrome, and this one has a little bit of a darker base and a more transparent shimmer on top in the same tones as Coro in the Juvia's Place palette. So when you look at them in the sun or in the right angle, you can see that they are very, very similar, but then Karma has a little bit of a darker, warmer base, and it is a true duochrome. So although I love the shade Coro, I have that as an actual alternative, and I also have another shade which is called Polline by Neve Cosmetics, which is extremely similar, and Polline is more in the same family, let's say, as Coro, in the sense that it doesn't have a darker base for the duochrome. It just has this beautiful, it's a little bit more lime than the little bit more yellow shift of Coro. So overall, even for that, I have two very good alternatives. Coro has a beautiful luminosity, but yeah, maybe I can show you here in the video. And yeah, but even here, I have three shades, two other shades that look the same. Then we get to a sticking point, because the middle shade of the central row, called Chaga, is the most unique thing I've seen. I really don't have anything like it. This is a duochrome with an orange base and a gold shift, and it is, I don't know, I don't have anything like it. I really don't. The closest thing I found is Two Birds by Colourpop. However, this is a straight up shimmer without any shift, so you can see that it doesn't look much like it. I compared it to the shade Gemini in the Gemini palette, but Gemini is much more orangey red than these two, and I honestly have nothing that looks like this duochrome in my collection. And I thought it would be easy to do, but nothing. The only thing with the Chaga is that it doesn't look that great on my lid somehow, and that makes me a little bit sad, in the sense that I've used it a few times, but I don't reach for it because it doesn't contrast enough with my skin tone. Maybe that is the reason. I don't know why. I don't know. But it is so unique and it is so beautiful. I can't dupe that. I really can't. Another shade that I have similar things to, but I cannot dupe, is this Cuba shade, this deep forest green shimmer. This one here, I thought, oh, easy peasy, I'm full of forest greens, I'll have 25 dupes, and you can see on the screen that I have a lot of different forest greens. I first compared it to the shade Houdini by Makeup Geek, which is a foiled eyeshadow that is more of a blackened teal. Beautiful, but a little bit cooler and darker than Cuba. And the other shade I thought from Makeup Geek that would be a good dupe would be Epic, the other foiled eyeshadow that they have, that is instead a dark forest green. Nope, too forest green, not blue enough, and the other one is too blue. So the point of green that this shade in the Juvia's Place has is very unique. I also compared it to Mean Green from the Smoke Sessions palette, and let's say that this one is also a little bit too forest green for it. And from that point of view, let's say I don't have an exact dupe. I do, however, have three very, very good alternatives. And this was one of the shades that I thought, oh, maybe I'll keep the palette just for this and the other dark green. But looking at the swatches like this together, I can really tell that I think I have enough. My feelings really switched also since getting the Smoke Sessions palette, because I have the feeling that I get kind of not similar looks, but similar vibes from it. Anyway, let's move on to the most disappointing shade, which is Ashanti, this poopy brown, yellow toned brown. I don't have anything like it. On the screen you can see swatches compared to Preppy by Makeup Geek and Caramel by Nabla. Nothing like literally nothing like them. It doesn't look like anything in the Gemini palette or in the Smoke Session palette. The brown in the Just My Luck by Colourpop right here is too deep and not a dupe at all. One shade I want to compare it with still is in the Morphe 35M palette, because the Morphe palette has a lot of poopy greens, as you can see here. So let me take this shade and this shade to compare, but I don't think they will look alike at all. No, indeed. Again, completely different from each other. It is as if it's a little bit in between things. But here you can see, and these first two are from the Morphe palette, and this one here is from the Juvia's Place palette. It also swatches horribly, and even worse, it applies on the eyes so patchy. I was so disappointed and so sad, because I really thought this would be the perfect poopy brown. Again, it doesn't look like anything in the Gemini, which I thought had all the poopy browns that I could ever want, but it actually doesn't. And I'm actually a bit sad, because it's a beautiful shade, but it doesn't perform. So even if I don't have a dupe, it's not a reason to keep this palette, because I cannot use the shade. It really just is very, very patchy. Next shade in the Juvia's Place Tribe palette is this shade here called Kurla, which is a beautiful bright orange shimmer. And you can see on the screen I compare it to the shade Crackle by Colourpop, and it is quite close, I find. Not particularly exactly the same. I think the shade in the Juvia's Place palette is more orange, and I wanted to show you now on screen the comparison with the more orangey shade in the Safari palette right here. The shade Tigress in the Safari palette is much more red toned than the shade in the Juvia's Place Tribe. Top is Safari, and then we have Tribe, and you can see that the one in the Tribe is much more orange and the one in the Safari is much more red, and the formula in the Safari palette just wins in all the ways possible. It is so beautiful and so metallic compared to the one in the Juvia's Place Tribe palette. Another comparison that we can do is again in the Morphe palette, and it's this shade right here, which is a bright orange shimmer, and you can see it right here. The difference here is mainly in the fact that the Morphe shade has some silver glitter in it, and gold as well. It's a bit more multi-dimensional than the one in the Safari palette. But as you can see here, these are another three. Let me put the Colourpop one as well so that we have them all together. Here we have another three shades that can work very much instead of this shade in the Juvia's Place Tribe palette. I am cleaning my fingers in the meantime. Final shade in the Tribe palette, which is also one of the ones that made me want to keep the palette, is this dark green. This is called Sun. It is a beautiful green that looks teal, but it really isn't. And you can see on screen I compared it to Inglot number 333, which is a little bit lighter and greener, and then I also compare it to Conjour Up by Colourpop, which is instead much more teal. So you can see that the one in the Juvia's Place palette doesn't really look that that teal compared to Conjour Up. Then I also compared it to Space Queen from the Smoke Sessions palette, which is much, much darker, and the two matte greens on the bottom of the Just My Luck palette, which are Act Natural and Mobamba. Mobamba is maybe the closest thing, but it's again a little bit more warm toned green than the one in the Juvia's Place palette. So for this one, actually, I do not have a dupe, and it is a beautiful green that works also really well. So overall, this is a shade that I would miss. I want to show you just on the screen a quick comparison with Jungle from the Safari palette that I have right here, and they couldn't be more different. This top shade is Jungle, and then here is the Juvia's Place one. Wait a second, these mattes don't swatch the best, but they work really well on the eyes. So here we have it, on top Safari palette, on the bottom Tribe palette, and they're just completely different. The one in the Safari palette has more blue and more gray, and the one in the Juvia's Place Tribe palette is more green. So that is not a dupe either, but yeah, nevertheless, I do have a bit of options. They're not the same. They're not the same. That shade is the last one in the palette, so let me know down below right now. What do you think I should do? Should I keep it or should I give it away? I'm leaving it right here. Let's wait for it. I'll be curious to see your comments down below about it, and in the meantime, I will tell you my thoughts. Overall, I feel like I don't need this palette. The color scheme doesn't attract me a lot. I think it is beautiful if you don't have anything like it. I think you can use it as a companion palette, but on its own, I don't think it's wearable for me, and that is the thing. It's like I can't really make anything out of it by itself. I always have to have something next to it, and yeah, I don't know. I'm just not in love with it. So I think that because I'm not in love with it, it can go. I'm curious to hear what you think. This palette will probably come up again during my next declutter, which I'm hoping to do at the end of September. I'm coming back from holiday, and then my husband is gone for a week and I'm home alone, and I think it's a perfect time to take all of my makeup out, do a declutter, reorganize my makeup room. You know, I'm home alone for a week, and it includes a weekend in which I'm gonna go dancing with my girlfriends. But besides that, I think it's a perfect time for a declutter. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful. If not for you, at least it was useful for me to make peace with this palette. And I think that when I put together dupes, I'd like to share them because, I mean, I'm doing it anyways. Why not share it with you guys? This is what my channel is about. Sharing my love for makeup and what I do with my makeup. And if it helps you, even better. Yeah, that's why I do it. It's just, I don't know, I like to share it. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Let me know if you have the palette and if I'm missing a crucial point of the palette and why I should keep it. And I hope you will subscribe to hang out with me a little bit more. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys!